Discovered mom had made a secret inheritance for my golden sister, so I quit paying all their bills. My jaw dropped when I saw the family expenses spreadsheet, over $100,000, all from me, while mom built a fortune for my sister. Amelia Amy Harper, 33, a self-taught freelance web designer, stared at her laptop screen, a knot tightening in her stomach. For years, she'd prided herself on her independence, building a successful career from scratch, working remotely from her stylish downtown apartment. She'd always been the responsible one, the capable one, unlike her younger sister, Chloe. Amy had been quietly supporting her family for the past 5 years. She paid the hefty annual fees for their beachfront condo in Florida, covered Chloe's car payments, and even funded their lavish family vacations, a Mediterranean cruise last year, a European tour the year before. It was her way of giving back, or so she thought. The family expenses spreadsheet was a meticulously maintained record of every penny she'd contributed. The grand total was a sickening $113,845. Over 5 years, she'd poured her hard-earned money into her family, believing they genuinely needed help. Her mother, Susan, had always been vague about their finances, claiming Robert, Amy's father, was struggling to keep up with expenses. But a casual Sunday dinner at her parents' condo had shattered that illusion. It was supposed to be a relaxing evening, but it quickly turned into an interrogation. "Amy, darling," Susan had started, her voice laced with a familiar guilt-inducing sweetness, "the condo association fees are due next month. And the insurance on Chloe's car went up again." Amy had felt a familiar wave of resentment, quickly suppressed. She'd always been happy to help, hadn't she? "I've been paying for everything for years, Mom," Amy finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. "The condo fees, Chloe's car, Mom's treatments, those family trips, I've never asked for anything in return, but..." Robert, pacing the room, his face reddening, cut her off. "Your sister needs that money, Amy. Chloe's trying to get her startup off the ground. You're doing well, you can afford it." Susan, avoiding Amy's gaze, added, "We gave you everything growing up, Amy. Now that we need you, you're abandoning us?" That's when Amy noticed the envelope on the coffee table. Partially hidden, a corner of an official-looking document peeked out. She saw the words Trust Fund and Chloe Harper in bold lettering. Her heart plummeted. Before Robert could stop her, Amy grabbed the envelope. "Amy, that's private," he snapped, but it was too late. The document revealed the truth, a substantial trust fund, established by Robert, exclusively for Chloe. $350,000, with provisions for future contributions. All while Amy had been told, repeatedly, that money was tight. All while she'd been working tirelessly, sacrificing her own savings, to keep them afloat. "When were you going to tell me about this?" Amy whispered, the room spinning. Her whole life, the subtle favoritism, the different expectations, the constant financial demands, suddenly made sense. Robert snatched the document back, but the damage was done. The numbers were seared into her memory. "You weren't supposed to see that," he muttered. "Clearly," Amy replied, her voice hollow. "I guess that explains why you never helped with my student loans." Growing up, the pattern had been consistent. Chloe got expensive horseback riding lessons. Amy was told to focus on her grades. Chloe received a brand new car for her 16th birthday. Amy took the bus until she could afford a used one. Chloe went to a private university. Amy juggled scholarships and a part-time job at a local coffee shop. Amy had always rationalized it, but now the truth was undeniable. Her parents valued Chloe more. "Sweetheart," Susan finally spoke, her voice a manipulative whisper, "your sister needs more help. You've always been so independent. So capable. We're proud of how well you've done on your own." The twisted logic was breathtaking. Amy was being punished for her success, while Chloe was rewarded for her dependence. "All those times I asked for help," Amy said, memories flooding back. "When I was working 2 jobs in college, barely sleeping. When my car broke down. When I needed a security deposit for my first apartment. You said you couldn't help. But the money was there. It was just for Chloe." Robert shifted uncomfortably. "Investment decisions aren't that simple, Amy. We had to think about the future." "Just not my future," Amy replied. She thought of the condo fees, over $9,000 annually, for 5 years. She'd covered roof repairs last summer, totaling $15,000, without complaint. All while they were secretly building Chloe's nest egg. "The condo fees are due next month," Robert said, changing the subject, sliding the bill across the table. "And the homeowners association increased their fees again." Amy stared at him, incredulous. After everything, he still expected her to pay. The audacity was breathtaking. Something inside Amy shifted. She'd been played for a fool, but that ended today. "I'll take care of it," she said quietly, picking up the bill. Robert visibly relaxed, missing the resolve in her eyes. The drive back to her apartment was a blur. Once home, she ignored her ringing phone, undoubtedly Robert, making sure she wouldn't renege, and opened her laptop. With trembling fingers, she opened the family expenses spreadsheet. The figures were even worse than she remembered. Condo fees, 5 years, $45,000 plus. Chloe's car payments, $18,722. Susan's alternative treatments, chronic back pain, $8,950. Family vacations, $26,173. Roof repairs, $15,000. Total, $113,845. Her phone pinged with a text from Chloe. "Dad says you're being difficult about the condo fees. Don't be selfish, Amy." Amy laughed bitterly. Of course, Chloe would take their side. She'd been the beneficiary of their favoritism her entire life. Another text, from Robert, "We're counting on you for those fees, Amy. Don't let us down." No, thank you. No acknowledgement of her past contributions. Just the expectation that she would continue to finance their lifestyle, while they built Chloe's future. The next morning, Amy called Joseph Green, her financial advisor, the one who'd helped her build her investment portfolio. "This is quite a list," Joseph said, reviewing her spreadsheet. His eyes widened at the total. "And you've never asked for repayment?" "They're family," Amy said simply. "I wanted to help." Joseph removed his glasses. "Amy, your generosity is admirable, but this is unsustainable. You're hindering your own financial future while enabling dependence. This isn't healthy." "I know that now," Amy said quietly. "I just discovered they've created a substantial trust fund for my sister, while letting me shoulder all these expenses." Joseph's expression darkened. "That changes things." They spent the next 2 hours developing a plan. Amy would need documentation, notarized statements of all her contributions, formal receipts, a complete accounting. Joseph recommended his colleague, Victor Ramirez, a forensic accountant specializing in financial disputes. "Are you sure you want to go down this road?" Joseph asked. "Family conflicts over money can get ugly." Amy thought of the trust fund document, of years of being told there wasn't enough to help her, while Chloe received everything. She thought of the condo fee bill, casually pushed across the table. "I'm sure," she said, her voice stronger. "It's time they understood exactly what I've been contributing, and what happens when that contribution stops." 1 week later, Amy sat in Victor Ramirez's office, surrounded by papers. The forensic accountant had been methodically organizing her financial contributions. "Your documentation is impressively thorough," Victor noted. "Most people don't keep records this detailed. My web design work, and managing my own finances, taught me good record keeping," Amy explained. "So, what's the total damage?" Amy asked. Victor slid a document across his desk. The final tally was even worse than her initial calculations, $133,760. The additional $19,915 comes from interest you've lost by diverting these funds from your own investments, he explained. "Based on your portfolio's performance, that's a conservative estimate." Amy nodded, feeling a mix of vindication and grief. The numbers made the betrayal concrete, undeniable. "What now?" Amy asked. "That depends on what you want," Victor replied. "If you're seeking legal restitution, we could build a case, though family financial matters can be complicated. If you're simply documenting this for your own closure, or as leverage, we can prepare a comprehensive financial statement." "The second option," Amy said. "For now." As Victor prepared the documentation, Amy's phone buzzed. "Robert, haven't received the condo payment yet. Due date is approaching." "Chloe, Dad says you're being difficult about money. After all they've done for you? Really, Amy?" Amy silenced her phone. Let them wonder. 3 days later, Amy received a notarized financial statement from Victor's office. It detailed every cent she'd contributed, categorized by recipient, purpose, and date. It included a calculation of lost investment opportunity and a statement from Joseph Green verifying the analysis. That evening, Amy received a call from Susan. "Amy, your father is concerned about the condo payment," she began, her voice carefully modulated. "The due date is next week." "I know when it's due, Mom." "Well, will you be handling it? You've always been so reliable." The casual assumption ignited something in Amy. 5 years of payments, without a single thank you. 5 years of giving, while they secretly built Chloe's nest egg. Not this time, Amy said quietly. A long pause. What do you mean? I'm not paying the condo fees anymore. Or any other family expenses. But we're counting on you. The money is already allocated. Elsewhere, Susan's voice had a frantic edge. To Chloe's trust fund, you mean? The words hung in the air. Another long silence. Your father told me you saw that. Amy, you have to understand. I understand perfectly, Mom. I understand that I've contributed nearly $134,000 to this family, while you and Dad have been telling me there wasn't enough money to help with my education or housing. I understand that I've been financing your lifestyle, while you've been securing Chloe's future. That's not fair. She protested weakly. No, it's not, Amy agreed. And I'm done with it. She ended the call and turned off her phone, knowing the real storm was yet to come. The next morning, Amy made 3 significant changes. She canceled the automatic payment for Chloe's car. She removed herself as an authorized payer on all family accounts. She transferred $134,000 from her brokerage account to a new, separate investment fund, labeled My Future. For the first time in years, she felt unburdened. The fallout was swift and explosive. By noon, her phone was bombarded with messages. She finally turned it back on during her lunch break, watching notifications flood her screen. Chloe, 7 missed calls, multiple texts. What the hell, Amy? The bank says my car payment was declined. Are you trying to ruin my credit? I have plans. Dad is furious. Fix this now. Robert, multiple texts. Call me immediately. This is unacceptable behavior. You can't just abandon your responsibilities. Amy ignored them and focused on her work. Only after finishing her projects did she listen to the single voicemail from Susan. Amy, please. Her voice trembled. Your father is beside himself. The condo notice came with a late fee warning. Chloe can't make her car payment, she'll lose her car. We don't understand why you're doing this. Whatever's upset you, we can talk about it. Please call us back. No recognition of the trust fund, no acknowledgement of her years of support. Just pressure to resume the status quo. Amy was composing a measured response when her intercom buzzed. Miss Harper, the building security guard's voice came through. Your father is here, demanding to see you. He's quite insistent. Amy's stomach tightened. Tell him I'm not available. He's saying he won't leave until you come down. Then call the police if he refuses to leave. Very well, ma'am. 20 minutes later, a text from an unknown number. Cousin Ben just saw Uncle Robert being escorted from your building by security. What's going on? Are you okay? Amy hadn't spoken to Ben in months. She texted back, I'm fine. Family financial disagreement. His response surprised her. About time you stood up to them. The way they've treated you versus Chloe has been wrong for years. Amy stared at her phone. She'd always assumed no one else noticed. The validation from Ben was unexpected and deeply affirming. Her doorbell rang at 7 p.m. She checked the peephole. Chloe, arms crossed, foot tapping. Amy opened the door, but blocked the entrance. What do you want? What do I want? Chloe repeated incredulously. I want you to explain why you're suddenly acting like a psycho. My car payment bounced. Dad says you're refusing to pay the condo fees. Correct, Amy said calmly. Why? What's your problem? The problem is that I've contributed almost $134,000 to this family over the last 5 years, while Dad has been secretly funding a trust fund for you. Chloe's expression flickered, surprise, guilt, then defensive anger. That's different. The trust is for my future. I need that security. And I don't? Amy asked. You've always been the smart one, Chloe said, as if that explained everything. You've got your fancy web design career. I'm still trying to find my path. At 31, Chloe? While I pay your car payments and fund family vacations? Chloe flushed. You've never complained before. Because I didn't know I was being manipulated. I didn't know that while I was draining my accounts, Dad was funneling money into your trust fund. It's not that much money, Chloe mumbled. $350,000 is a significant amount. Chloe's eyes widened. How do you know the exact amount? I saw the document. A beat of silence. Then, remarkably, Chloe tried a different tack. Her expression softened, and she reached for Amy's arm. Look, Amy, I understand you're upset, but we're family. We need your help. Dad says without the condo payment, they might lose the beach house. Amy stepped back, breaking contact. That's not my problem anymore. You'd let them lose the beach house? Where we spent our summers. How can you be so cold? Amy looked at her sister, really looked at her, and saw the entitlement that had been cultivated her entire life. Chloe genuinely couldn't comprehend why Amy would stop supporting them. They have options, Amy said. They could use some of your trust fund. Chloe's face hardened. That's not fair. Amy smiled sadly. No, Chloe. Nothing about this has been fair. She closed the door, gently but firmly. Update 1. 2 weeks passed. The condo fee deadline came and went. Amy maintained radio silence with her parents and Chloe, focusing on her work and her own financial planning. Joseph Green had helped her restructure her investment portfolio. The difference was substantial. She could significantly increase her retirement contributions and even consider buying a small vacation property of her own. Her newfound peace was shattered by an email from her Uncle David, Robert's brother. Amy, what's going on with Robert and the beach house? He's asking me for a $12,000 loan to cover the condo fees and penalties. Said something about you refusing to help anymore. This doesn't sound like you. Amy sat staring at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping. So, Robert was approaching other family members for money, rather than touching Chloe's sacred trust fund. She carefully composed a reply, attaching a PDF summary of her financial contributions, along with a brief explanation of the trust fund situation. Uncle David's response came within an hour. Holy hell, Amy. I had no idea. No one did. Robert's been telling everyone how he's struggling to help both his daughters equally. This changes things. The next day, her cousin Ben called. Amy, there's something you should know, he said, his voice urgent. There's a family meeting happening at your parents' house this weekend. Uncle Robert called it to discuss Amy's abandonment of the family. He's trying to rally everyone against you. Amy's stomach tightened. Thanks for telling me. There's more, Ben continued. I overheard my dad talking to your father. Apparently, they're planning to guilt you into not just resuming payments, but covering all the late fees and penalties, too. They're framing it as you deliberately damaging the family legacy. The audacity was breathtaking. Are you going to this meeting? Amy asked. Yes. And so are you, Ben said firmly. You need to set the record straight. I'll back you up. Amy agreed, though anxiety churned in her stomach. Update 2. When Saturday arrived, Amy dressed carefully in a professional black pantsuit. She drove to her parents' house with the complete financial documentation from Victor, including the notarized statements and calculations of lost investment opportunity. The living room fell silent when she walked in. Robert stood by the fireplace, clearly in mid-speech. Aunts, uncles, and cousins sat around the room, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. Chloe sat beside Susan, both looking uncomfortable. Amy, Robert recovered quickly, I'm glad you decided to join us. We were just discussing the family beach house situation. I'm sure you were, Amy replied evenly, setting her briefcase on the coffee table. And I'm sure you provided everyone with all the relevant financial information. His eyes narrowed. We were discussing your refusal to meet family obligations. Interesting, Amy said. She opened her briefcase. Because I have 5 years of financial records showing over $133,000 in family obligations I've already met. Money that apparently wasn't available to help with my education or housing, but was somehow available for Chloe's trust fund. A ripple of murmur spread through the room. Her Aunt Carol, always direct, spoke up. What trust fund? Amy looked at Robert, giving him the opportunity to answer. When he remained silent, she passed copies of the summary document to everyone. For the past 5 years, I've paid the condo fees, covered Chloe's car payments, funded family vacations, and more, totaling nearly $134,000. During the same period, my parents established a $350,000 trust fund exclusively for my sister. The room erupted. Robert's face flushed deep red. These are private family matters. He thundered. Exactly, Uncle David interjected, standing up. Family matters. And in this family, we should treat our children equally. Amy hadn't expected this level of support. As the room divided into heated discussions, Robert's gaze locked with Amy's. In his eyes, she saw something she'd never witnessed before: fear. The fear of exposure, of his carefully constructed narrative crumbling. And behind that fear, something even more unexpected: respect. The meeting ended with Robert storming out and Susan tearfully following him. Chloe sat frozen, avoiding eye contact. The rest of the family lingered, processing the revelations. "I had no idea it was this bad," Aunt Carol said, studying the documentation. "Robert always portrayed you as the successful one who didn't need help." Uncle David shook his head. "This isn't right. The beach house has been part of our extended family memories for years. If you've been paying those fees, Amy, you should have some ownership stake." Amy hadn't considered this. The condo was titled solely in her parents' names, despite her significant investment. "I don't want the house," Amy explained. "I just want them to recognize the unfairness." Ben placed a hand on her shoulder. "Recognition isn't enough, Amy, there should be consequences." Update 3. 3 days after the family meeting, Amy's phone lit up with a text from Robert. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Just 4 terse words: "The condo fees are due." Amy stared at the message, incredulous. After everything, he was still treating her like his personal ATM. That evening, she received an unexpected call from Susan. "Amy," her voice was hesitant, "your father isn't handling this well. The beach house means everything to him." "More than treating his daughters equally?" Amy asked. Susan's silence was telling. "Mom, I've contributed nearly $134,000. Dad created a $350,000 trust fund for Chloe, without ever offering me similar support. The disparity is glaring." "I know," she admitted quietly. "I've always known it wasn't right. But your father makes the financial decisions." Amy finished for her, "I understand. But this is where it stops." The next morning, Amy texted Robert back with a single attachment, a photograph of the complete, notarized financial record of her contributions, with the total circled in red. No message was necessary. An hour later, her phone rang. She expected Robert's angry voice, but instead heard Chloe's. "Amy?" Chloe sounded shaken. "Dad just showed me all the documentation you sent. Is it really that much? Over $133,000? "Yes, it is," Amy confirmed. "Every penny documented and verified by a forensic accountant." A long pause. "I had no idea," Chloe said finally. "Dad always told me you were helping a little here and there, because you had extra money. He never said you were covering major expenses while he was building my trust fund." Her voice cracked. "Amy. I don't know what to say. I feel terrible." "It's not entirely your fault," Amy conceded. "Dad created the situation," Chloe said, "but I benefited from it. And I never questioned it. I just assumed I deserved the help." Another long pause. Then Chloe surprised her. "I'm going to fix this," she declared. "It's not right." Before Amy could ask what she meant, Chloe hung up. The next day, Amy received formal documentation from Robert's attorney. The condo fees had been paid in full, along with a legally binding amendment to the ownership. Amy now owned a 25% stake in the property. Attached was a note from the lawyer explaining that Chloe had insisted on using funds from her trust fund to cover the taxes and legal fees. Amy's phone buzzed with a text from Robert. This wasn't necessary. Family helps family. Amy didn't respond. His message revealed that he still didn't understand, or refused to acknowledge, the fundamental unfairness. Minutes later, another text, this one from Susan. "Your father is struggling with this, but I want you to know I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. I should have done the same years ago." That evening, Chloe called again. "I've asked Dad to split the trust fund equally between us," she said. "He refused at first, but Uncle David and Aunt Carol backed me up. He's meeting with his financial advisor tomorrow to make the arrangements." Amy felt a weight lifting, not because of the money, but because of what it represented: acknowledgement, fairness, respect. "Thank you, Chloe," Amy said sincerely. "No," Chloe replied, "thank you for finally making us face the truth.